When you're tracing your family history, a great source are mental health records. They're interesting and useful. They can reveal family relationships and the circumstances surrounding someone's admission. In this video, I'll show you what information is contained in the records, how to access the full document, and I'll also share some tips on how to search the database available on scottishindexes.com. Throughout this video, I'll use terms that we see in the original records, which were created from 1858. To understand history, it's important that we look at the facts. Even the terms used are not ones we would use today. We need to understand that language changes over time, and terms that were used in 1858, although offensive today, were not intended to be that way at the time. In fact, the reforms of 1858 were intended to improve the care of people who were mentally ill, to try to improve their condition, and much of this care was provided for free. That said, we've come a long way since 1858. Modern medication and a better understanding of mental health and the illnesses resulting in mental health problems has helped millions of people. Let's explore these amazing records, beginning with the General Register. This series begins on the 1st of January 1858. The register starts by documenting everyone already in an asylum on that date, and then goes on to record everyone who is committed to an asylum in Scotland. Now, we can't access these records unless they're 100 years old. As new records are released to the public, we will continue to index them. What does the General Register tell us? Well, first of all, each patient is given an admission number. This is incredibly useful. If a patient is released, then readmitted months or years later, they use the same number. Next, we have a name. Now, a lot of women you'll see have two surnames. This is usually their maiden surname followed by their husband's surname. This is an incredibly useful feature when it comes to identifying our female ancestors. We're told if they were a private or a pauper patient. Most patients were paupers because the parish would pay for their care. They couldn't afford to do that themselves. And we're told if they were male or female. Next, we have the date of admission to the asylum and which asylum they went to. This is followed by the date that they left the asylum and the reason why. So there's a few reasons why. Some were recovered or relieved, and these patients might have gone home or perhaps gone to the care of a family member. On the other hand, some are recorded as not improved and others as incurable. Generally, those who had not improved or were incurable have been transferred to another asylum. If a person died while they were in the asylum, that's recorded as well. Now, that's a really useful feature because, as you can see, something that would have been very useful in this register but we don't see is the age. However, the date of death is a good identifier. Everyone in this register who died in an asylum will have a corresponding death certificate. You've likely already accessed that on the government website, Scotland's People, so you know the date of death. We see a note in the final column if they were readmitted. This volume gives us the key dates of admission, of transfer, of release, and death. But it doesn't tell us why our ancestors were in the asylum. However, what we can do is use this as a finding aid to more interesting records. Let's look now at the example of Jean McTavish or McAlpine. First of all, the two surnames. McTavish is very likely her maiden surname, and we would expect McAlpine to be her married surname. We also learn that she was admitted on the 9th of March 1858, and we're given her patient number. We see too from the General Register when she died. So, although we don't have an age, there is enough to identify Jean. Using the information from the General Register, we can now locate Jean's admission form. Generally, there's one volume a month from 1858. It's actually an incredible series of records. Volume MC2/3 contains admissions from the month of March 1858. So we need to know somebody's date of admission to be able to find their admission form, and that's why the General Register is so helpful. Now we see at the top of the admission form, we have that patient ID that we saw in the General Register. We also have the patient's name, of course, and the date of admission. Now, these forms are usually in date order, but in the early years of this series, they're not always. But what does this form tell us? We see pages of information about Jean. There are usually at least 4 pages for each patient. In some cases, there's additional information, such as a letter about them being added to the poor roll. Let's focus on the standard form, though. We see biographical information, the person's name, their occupation, their address, the parish or union to which they're chargeable, and also details about their next of kin. This is very helpful information, and it can really help us trace our family tree. For example, I've seen a next of kin named in Australia, but even if they live in closer to home, the address can help us track them down. The parish or union chargeable relates to pauper patients, those who had their care funded by the parish or poor law union. Now, sadly, not all poor law records survive, but some do. This is a brilliant clue that's well worth following up, especially if your ancestors were from Glasgow. To find out more about poor relief in Scotland, head over to our learning zone on scottishindexes.com. We also see information about the patient's health within the statement. Length of time insane, duration of attack, supposed cause, whether subject to epilepsy, whether suicidal, whether dangerous to others, whether another family member was insane. Of course, in 1858 or even 1900, there was limited understanding of the cause of mental health problems. Notice here that the supposed cause of Jean's illness is intemperance. Now, if she drank too much alcohol, that may have led to mental health problems, or perhaps she had pre-existing mental health problems, and that's why she turned to alcohol. 2 doctors examined the patient and spoke to the people who spent time with each patient. We see here recorded what they observed. Again, this is not a modern diagnosis, but it does give us an insight into the individual's health and why they were committed to an asylum. One doctor noted that Jean could not look after herself and was dangerous. Another recorded delusions that she was only 26 and was a bride. Let's look now at how we've indexed these records and which services we offer. Our website is scottishindexes.com. To search our index, go to the Records Set tab and then select Mental Health Records. We provide a flexible search form. Remember though, you don't need to fill in every box. Perhaps just start with a name, and if you get too many results, come back and refine your search. You'll see from the initial results that details in our index varies. Some entries have an estimated birth year and some have a death year. Some have both. Well, why is this? Not all patients died in the asylum. Only the patients who died in the asylum have a year of death. We're also continually improving our index. We spend a little time on each trip to the archive to collect ages from the admission forms. These ages are now being added to the index to help with identification. Let's look now at the example of Janet Benny or Stewart. Right away we see 2 surnames. Benny is most likely her maiden name, and she was probably married to someone with the surname Stewart. We see that she was committed to the Midlothian and Peebles District Asylum in 1890. When we click Full Record, we'll learn even more. We now see Janet's patient ID, and we're also given the reference for the original records in the National Records of Scotland, both the General Register and the Notices of Admission. Notice this though. This groups all patients with this ID together. We now see 2 results. But more than that, we also see a date of death. We learn from these index entries that Janet was first admitted on the 3rd of March 1890, then again on the 10th of April 1892, and she died on the 13th of April 1892. The date of death on the second admission will help you identify the person. Which entry should you order though? You may wish to see both, but if you only want to order one, we would recommend the first admission as it will probably have more detail. Work is continuing to add more information from the notices of admissions to help you identify people more easily. For some entries, you'll even see occupations and addresses have been added, or next of kin. Look at each index entry that relates to the person that you're interested in to see all of the information. Once you've done that, you'll be keen to view the entry. These are the 2 references that you need. The first one there is to the General Register, that begins MC7, and the other is to the admission form, that's MC2. Now, option 1 is to use our research service. Below the index entry, there's an option to use that. We charge £15. That covers our time to supply a copy of the original register and also the admission form. Now, to get a copy of the admission form usually involves us going to Edinburgh for you, to the National Records of Scotland. But a £15 fee covers all of that. Of course, you may wish to look at the original yourself, so you can use those references to do so. These records are stored off-site, so make sure you give the National Records of Scotland at least 3 working days' notice before you visit. You'll also need to have appropriate ID for a reader's ticket, so read the website of the National Records of Scotland carefully to get the most up-to-date information. If you choose to order from us, you will receive the register entry right away, usually within 48 hours. We'll then locate the admission form for you. Now, we try to complete all orders within 4 weeks, but sometimes it can be longer, especially if there are public holidays or we're on holiday ourselves. If you have to wait more than 4 weeks though, we'll let you know what the turnaround time will be. So what then is our order process? Well, before too long, you'll receive an email from us acknowledging your order. This will also tell you when you can expect to receive the General Register entry. Step 2 will be for us to send you the page from the General Register entry and let you know when you will receive the admission forms. This is usually done within 48 hours, but at busy times or at weekends or if we're on holiday, it may take slightly longer. We'll then locate the records in the National Records of Scotland, the admission forms. Now this step involves going to the National Records of Scotland in Edinburgh. We aim to have the second stage of your research done within 4 weeks. And again, if there's going to be a delay, we will let you know. You might be wondering though, there's multiple entries for the same person. Is there a discount available or is it just £15 per entry? Yes, we can offer a discount. If you're looking for 4 or more entries, we would be very happy to discount that for you. You're paying for our time, not the images. The flat rate works out for most people, but if your ancestor was in an asylum multiple times, then it's going to add up, and we understand that. Please just email us the list of entries, including the patient ID, and we'll get that discount arranged for you. Use the contact tab at the top of any page on our website to email us. Another question we get asked is that your ancestor is in the index, but they were admitted before 1858, when the admission forms begin. Will there be an admission form? Well, there won't for the pre-1858. However, if they were readmitted after the 1st of January 1858, there could be an admission form. So that's the first thing to look for. If they weren't readmitted, they just stayed in that asylum, perhaps until they were discharged, until they died, then you'll need to see if the records of that asylum still exist, if that institution has an archive somewhere. So how could you find out if there are other records relating to that asylum? It really depends which asylum it is. The survival rate varies. But on our index, click on the name of the asylum, and that will take you to a page about the asylum. Now, this is going to do a few things. It's going to show you a map. It'll show you some information about the asylum, but it will also link to the archive that now holds the records of that asylum. That's going to be particularly useful if your ancestor was committed before 1858. You can also find out more about records that are held in other archives in our learning zone under mental health records. Did you know? If a patient was admitted repeatedly, it's often best to look at the first admission form, as it will usually have more information. When a patient was transferred, the information can be more limited. Did you know? The 1857 Royal Commission report has a description of each asylum inspected in the 1850s. You can read these on our website. From the results page, simply click on that name of the asylum to read it. Our institution information pages have many useful links and information about each asylum in Scotland. Documents in archives which contain personal information are usually closed for 100 years. Now, it depends on the type of personal information. However, medical records are particularly sensitive. It's therefore only once they're 100 years old that we are able to view them. If you do wish to view a record that's less than 100 years old, particularly if it relates to you, there is a process in place. We don't organise that process at all. You'd have to contact either the NHS or the NHS Archive or the National Records of Scotland. However, every decision is made on a case-by-case basis. In general, for family history research, if it's medical information, we have to wait 100 years. Did you know? General paresis, or general paralysis of the insane, GPI, is caused by syphilis. Before penicillin was available to cure syphilis, some sufferers developed general paralysis of the insane and subsequently spent some time in the asylum. Here's a top tip. Use the free index on Scotland's people to verify the entry you have found in the mental health records. Look at this entry. John Scott, admitted to Bothwell Asylum, 1893. He died on the 6th of October, 1895. Is this your John Scott? There's so many John Scotts, it could be hard to tell. Using the free index on Scotland's people, I can locate John's death certificate. The mother's maiden name and age should tell me if this is my John Scott or another John Scott. Of course, if this is a direct ancestor, you would usually already have the death certificate, so you'll probably know the date of death. If not, it's a good idea just to double check, and if it's a direct ancestor, it's a good idea to have the death certificate anyway. I hope you found this short tutorial useful. We've got lots more information on our website, scottishindexes.com, and we hold 4 free conferences a year. So have a look around our website, and I hope it helps you to trace your family tree.